This applies.
We lost you, Brother Muhammad.
Muhammad, there is a lot of noise behind you. Somebody is talking loudly, and we can hear what they're saying.
ما شاء الله هذا خيي.
For privacy reasons, tell him to go to another room.
I will go to another room.
Okay.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah. Now we can't hear him though.
This is when he lowered his voice. Actually, you should hear when he was talking before.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, the culture came and hit me back.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Suhail.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Also, I would like to leave the opportunity for the new brothers who joined the first time. Brother Arif, if you have any question, or if you agree, or if you need to add to the main topic, please go ahead.
Jazakallah khair for inviting me, and glad to be here.
Welcome.
Well, welcome to have you.
Brother Muhammad, may I say something really brief about this whole discussion we had a minute ago?
Of course.
If we assume that this hadith of, obeying tyrant leaders is true, then Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar ibn al-Khattab did not live with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, it cannot be like this. If Abu Bakr said, "أطيعوني ما أطعت الله فيكم," and Umar says, "من رأى منكم في اعوجاجا فليقوم," as long as I obeying Allah, as long as I'm straight with you, obey me. Otherwise, I have no obedience. Did they have a different teacher than Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It was his teacher. So how come he says he teaches them like this, and then you have this hadith says, even if his tyrant whips your back and takes your money and I don't know what else, you have to obey? It contradicts 100%. I mean, I have to either believe Abu Bakr Umar, or believe maybe, I don't know, Abu Huraira or somebody else who came up with a hadith like that. It's just contradictory.
But
I'm sorry.
Muhammad, you're saying it's contradictory because you use your head. Do you want every Muslim to use their head?
Absolutely.
Oh my God. We might have a problem there.
We
You
do.
mean they're gonna start thinking?
Yes.
You never know what's gonna happen if they start all thinking.
I'll accept it anyway.
Okay. I'm with you.
Better have brothers and sisters who are thinking than have people who are ignorant and accept corruption to last more than 1,000 years in the Ummah.
SubhanAllah.
Yes.
The floor is yours, Dr. Suhail.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Actually, alhamdulillah, we're having this meeting regularly to express our concerns and rejection, actually, of the current situation of Muslims, and to understand why, and more importantly, to figure out what to do about it. It's alhamdulillah, the approach that we are adopting is to confront the reality as is, without any sugarcoating, without any without trying to fool ourselves or deceive ourselves, because there is another discourse there that talks about Islam is the fastest growing religion, and community is growing, and we have more mosques and we have more Jumu'ah, so we are in good shape. That's not true. We have seen that in the Muslim world happening in the last several decades, that many Muslims become practicing. Mosques were deserted and then become full. A lot of Muslim activities, a lot of literatures, a lot of websites, a lot of TV channels, a lot of YouTube channels, but nothing has changed in the Muslim world. So let's not fool ourselves. It's not lacking in numbers. It's as the Rasul said, "Bal antum yawma'idhin kathir." It's not a problem of numbers, but it is. And I said this last khutbah in Adam last Jumu'ah. I said Islam, when properly understood, and when Muslims commit to it fully. So when we are okay with understanding and we are okay with commitment, the two. If we pass the two tests, then there are some results that we should see. And these results are, number one, Islam transforms individuals. Islam transforms individuals. So if you see people embracing Islam and not transforming, that's a problem. And we see that, unfortunately. We see nowadays people who may be very religious, but their manners, their characters, their spousal relationship, family relationship, etc., work ethics may not be the best. So transformation of the individuals. Why and how Islam transforms individuals? Because it turns them into people who are mission-driven. Someone who used to live for themselves, they live routine life, and now they are living for a cause. They are living for a mission. And that's how the Sahaba were transformed. The companions were transformed by this. Before they knew how to fast or pray, that's not what transformed them. What transformed the companions in Mecca is this sense of mission. It's commitment to a mission, living for Allah and His cause, pledging to do whatever it takes to seek Ridwanullah, and to do what Allah expects us to do. That's one thing. The second transformation that you should see is that these individuals, they become agents of change in their communities. Islam, if someone understands Islam properly and commit to it fully, this person becomes a difference maker in their circles. They have an impact. They have impact on people, and they have impact on the situation around them, whether it is neighborhood, whether it is workplace, whether it is their extended family. They have an impact. How do they have that impact? They become Rasula Qawmeh. The person fulfills the role of the Prophet in his circle. And the Prophet role was clearly explained in Quran. A Prophet is a role model, so you should try to be a role model for people around you. The Prophet was mercy. You should try to be mercy to people around you. The Prophet was a teacher. You should be in the business of teaching people around you. And in order to teach, you need to learn, because you cannot give that which you don't have. And the Prophet was doing mentoring, yuzakkihim, and you should also do the same. That's how you have impact on people around you. Now, how do you have impact on the conditions around you? That's by fulfilling the mission of Islah, or Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. That wherever you are, you should try to promote, reinforce, strengthen anything that is good, and try to reduce or eliminate anything that is bad. So that's a second result that you should see. The third result is that Islam has this ability of bringing people together, those mission-driven individuals, bring them together into solid community that has unity of purpose or common cause and unity of leadership. And that community, like the prophetic community, will make a difference in the society at large. So these three results that you should see when Islam is properly understood and the Muslims are taking it seriously and are committed to it fully. Anytime you don't see those results, you have to put question mark on the understanding and or the commitment. We either don't have the proper understanding or our commitment is not solid enough. That's why we don't see those results. So, and nowadays we don't see any of these. We have seen individuals, as I mentioned, they become practicing and they don't change. And we have seen societies, many of its members become practicing and does not change. We are not seeing that change. We're not seeing that unity. We're not seeing that prophetic community with the true leadership. What you see in mosques, you have community, has an imam, has board, has a president, has an executive committee, has managers, has speakers, has administrators, has activists and volunteers, but does not have a leader. We are nowhere close to the model of Rasul ﷺ in building and leading a community. We need to understand it and simulate it, because we're going nowhere without it. And it was narrated that Umar ibn Khattab said, لا إسلام بلا جماعة ولا جماعة بلا إمارة. And there is no, Islam cannot thrive without a community carrying it, and the community cannot exist without leadership. So these essence of the religion were lost over the centuries. This sense of mission, the ultimate purposes of Islam, or maqasid, the prophetic model, the leadership model, and the great model of Rasul ﷺ in building and leading very effective community. What was left from Islam is the rituals and the fiqh. So nowadays, people, when they talk about Islam, they talk about praying, fasting, etc. And or what is halal and what is haram. So that sense of mission, those risala, those ultimate purposes, maqasid, those model of leadership were lost. And also many dimensions of Islam have faded. The spiritual dimension was weakened over the century. Nowadays, in the name of fighting bid'ah by some Sufi groups, the Salafi, which have been dominant for so long now, their methodology is very, very dominant. They called for no spirituality. So we go from one extreme to another. So we have this dry Islam that come out of the desert with almost no spirituality. Sense of mission weakened, spirituality weakened, the human dimension, the fact that Islam and its prophet was sent as mercy to humanity, not to Muslims. The human dimension, that the compassion. Islam has a great dose of compassion. If you see the discussion between the prophets and their people, it's full of compassion. إني لكم ناصح أمين إني أخاف عليكم عذاب يوم عظيم. We replace that by dividing the world into Muslims and non-Muslims. So rather than seeing the person as a human being who was dignified by Allah, no, we see that person as non-Muslim. And even non-Muslim, then we allow ourselves to judge, to say that, decide that person is going to go to hellfire. And then some people will come and say, okay, what should we do with that person? This is a kafir. So you see how many steps we go in deviation. You allow ourselves to judge, that's something that Allah reserved for himself. And then not only judge or categorize people or label them, but also decide what to do with them. As if it's our responsibility to convert people or to force Islam on people. And of course, this is based on fatwa and hadith and schools of thoughts and madahib. So the compassion sense of, there is no da'wah without compassion. If you're not really, if you don't feel, if you're If you don't care about people, you better don't get involved in da'wah, because da'wah comes out or springs out of compassion, because you care about people. That's what Rasul was doing, to the point that Quran was revealed to tell him to take it easy on himself, because he was so compassionate and so much caring about people, and wants them to really be saved, and want them to take the gift of Allah, of guidance, and to the point that Quran revealed in several places, فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ على آثارهم إن لم يكونوا مهتدين, and in Surah Al-Shu'ara. So in several places it shows you how much the Prophet was really, and you can see that every time he has a chance to talk to anybody, he would do it, regardless of the reaction. So that's also the character, the emphasis of Quran, the emphasis of Islam on character also has weakened. You have people nowadays who claim to be religious and they are very rude. Not only they are not compassionate, but their character is not really, even their honesty. I mean, people, they can be praying 5 times a day on time and in the masjid, and they can be cheating, and they can be bribing and taking bribery, and they don't see any contradiction with that. And they may not have any work ethics. They go to work, but they're not productive, and they don't see any contradictions. So even number of values, as Dr. Safi mentions, usually number of values and principles and character also were lost, and we're left with this very dry, very superficial version of Islam that does not change individuals, does not change anything. It just makes a person, actually it isolates a person from their environment, and turns Islam into like a sect, taifa. Nowadays, when you become practicing, you become like a special, separate category from the society, as if you start to belong to a different sect. So all of this tells us the amount of change that is needed. And because of that, there is hardly any amount of fixing that can be done on the existing versions of Islam. We just have to rediscover the original Islam. I mean, if you take the existing versions and try to fix them, good luck. You're not going to go anywhere. They are beyond repair. Somebody comes and drops the essence of the deen and takes some elements and blow them out of the proportion and cause all this mutilation to the religion, and you think you can fix it, you have a quick or solution or simple way to fix it? No. The only way is basically to do what we avoided to do for a long time. Because the primary duty of Muslims at any time and in any context is to do what? Is to go to the Quran and the authentic Sunnah of Rasulullah and try to contextualize it. Contextualize it meaning trying to understand it and apply it in their context. And that's great, tremendous efforts. Yes, it's a risky task, it's a demanding, but there is no way to avoid it. And we have been avoiding it for a long time. And what did we do? We went for the easy way, for the shortcut. Rather than doing that exercise, that intellectual exercise, Quran is fixed. Life is changing. The only way Quran can remain always relevant and inform life and lead it and guide it is by contextualizing it. I always use the analogy that before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used to send specific messenger to specific people to specific time, and he did not preserve it. Why he did not preserve it? Because it was meant for those people for that time, and that continued from Adam alayhi salam to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then with the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, things have changed. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us that mandate, that assignment to keep the religion relevant. He said, I'm going to promise the sources of guidance, and now it is your job. I'm not going to send a messenger to United States and a messenger to Mexico and to South Africa and to India. It's your job. It's your job to take that fixed guidance and then contextualize it to your reality. Unfortunately, Muslims, for many reasons, we can talk about them another time. For many reasons, they opted for the easy way, shortcut, laziness. Rather than doing that exercise, I will take a product that was developed centuries ago and thousands of miles away in a very different context. And then I translate it to English and they say, this is our version of Islam. So rather than contextualizing, we went for translation. Translate the books of tafsir, translate the books of fiqh, translate. So translation rather than contextualizing. And that's very bad. To fail to do your primary duty is to contextualize the divine guidance so that you make Islam very inspiring, very empowering, very relevant, solves the problem of people, answers the questions of people, and have an impact on the society where it settles. And make it a mainstream and indigenous religion rather than a foreign religion. We failed miserably. And actually what happened, what we did is even the other way around, is when an American embraces Islam, our version of Islam makes this person foreigner in their own country. Rather than making Islam indigenous, we are making Muslims foreigner in their own countries. Why? Because we have a foreign version of Islam. We have something that is not very relevant. And then when an American embraces nowadays, this person becomes a foreigner in their own. He takes the package. He takes that superficial understanding and with it the culture, and then becomes a foreigner in their own country, and then starts to have barriers between them and even their close members of the family. They cannot interact with them. Why? Because of that paradigm that they embrace. So something that we avoided for a long time, these are the results. It is about time to have the courage, the bravery to do it. That Islam, because this is, by the way, one of the greatest misconceptions. People say that Islam is valid for all times and all places, which is true. But what does it mean? It means that they take the understanding of Islam that was developed centuries ago, and then they say it's valid. No, the original Islam is valid, not the interpretation of people. The original guidance is valid for all times and all places, but valid with contextualization, by making the effort to make it relevant. That's what was missing. So it is not the understanding of anybody that is valid for all times and all places. And that's why, from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His mercy, gave us a guidance that is very flexible. It's almost guidance. It's not a book of law. It's only some Muslims who turned Quran into rigid laws. It is meant to inspire, to guide, to uplift, to make you someone who is motivated to do good, and etc. It was not meant to be rigid laws that will cripple people and will prevent them from thriving in this life, even before the hereafter. A lot of work needs to be done. It is not an easy job, but it's doable. If we really have the commitment and the courage, we can do it. Alhamdulillah, in this group, we came a long way. And surprisingly, our message is well received wherever we go. It is just needs, of course, not the establishment. Establishment will not like it, because they will see it as a threat. The establishment, even among Muslims, I mean, they will not like it because it calls for change, and they don't want it. Always establishment wants status quo. But the masses, they are looking for something and it is well received. It is just our job to have a solid group around it and find sponsors for this message so that we can package it and market it aggressively both here and in the Muslim world.
Jazakallahu khairan, Doctor. This is, you described the problem that we are going through. I think you put a lot of things in perspective. We need now, each one of us, to start thinking about what is it that we are facing and what are our priorities? What is it that we need to do next? If we are in a predicament, how to get out of this predicament? And alhamdulillah, the response to what you say is positive, and it should be, because you simply speak in logic. You are not inventing anything new. You're not proposing something outside the realm of what the Prophet ﷺ taught and what the Quran teaches us. So if people want to verify what you're saying, they have the Quran and they have the Sunnah, and they can go and verify it for themselves. I was talking to Muhammad Al-Habbal and Muhammad Hamid in the last 2 days, and we think each one of us is responsible to start as if the Prophet died yesterday, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and take his heritage and start moving forward with it the way we see fit today, not then, today. So if he had died yesterday, what should we do today as part of the Ummah? I think this is a valid question for each one of us. And it's our responsibility. It's not the responsibility of somebody who graduated from Al-Azhar necessarily, although he has a responsibility, or not a responsibility of somebody who does full-time the job of answering ifta, a question, you know. As a matter of fact, I really don't understand what muftis do nowadays, because we discovered that everything that is haram is defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very clearly in the Quran. And why do we have to ask about everything we see if it is halal or haram? You know, it's the haram is clear and everything else is halal. So let's try to utilize the talents we have in the Ummah to start building on the heritage we received from the Prophet ﷺ, as if he died yesterday. This is the way I see it. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair. Great.
Thank you.
That's exactly the similar meaning. I like it that as if the Prophet died yesterday, and also say as if you are one of those people who came to Medina, embraced Islam, and the Prophet sent you back to your tribe to do his job, to do the job. That's what every one of us, that's why I keep saying Rasulullah Qawma. That's what every one of us should feel, that as if Rasul is now alive, you went to Medina, you embraced Islam, Rasul sent you back here. To do what? To do the job of the Prophet, to be a role model, to teach, to uplift, and to perform the mission of Islah, and make whatever place you settle in, make it a better place. And do that as an individual, because everyone is responsible. On the day of judgment, we're going to be held accountable individually, but also join together and form a community similar to the community of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which has true leadership, true brotherhood. It's not like the community you see nowadays. This is our community in the masjid today, has very little to do with the prophetic community. Now we have a place to pray together, and we have a facility that provides some services and some activities. That's not the meaning of a community. Community has a mission. That's what brings them together. Facility doesn't matter. We can be praying in different mosques. We can be living in different area, but we are joined with a mission, and then there is unity of leadership. And both of those are missing today. Our community is not mission driven, and it is leaderless.
Yes.
We are confusing managers and imams with leaders. There is no comparison between the two.
Yes.
Imams and speakers, they give speeches, they give fatwa, they manage facilities, organize activities, etc. But leadership is something else.
Well, Dr. Suhail, let's bring it down to the level of everybody. Tomorrow morning, suppose I have a job somewhere, and we keep thinking of ourselves, well, the Prophet ﷺ was rahma lil alameen. How can I demonstrate that in my place of work? What is it that I need to do tomorrow morning to make the people around me feel that the man I follow, the values I learned from that man, are truly mercy to everybody, not just to me or to Muslims, or mercy to everybody. There must be a way I can demonstrate this. If I cannot demonstrate it, then it's not true. Either that or I don't truly believe it.
I agree.
So either we believe it and we can find ways today about what we need to do tomorrow, or we're useless, or we don't truly believe it. I don't know.
I agree. It's not going to be easy in this country because a lot of Islamic values are already there. So adding is not going to be easy. It would have been much easier in another place when people don't have work ethics, and people are cheating, and people, etc., bribing. It would have been easier for us to show Islam, but still, Islam has something to offer everywhere, even to the most advanced nation. It's more difficult, more challenging job, but it's still doable. I believe that a Muslim, their prime duty of a Muslim is to work on understanding and embodying the divine guidance, the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning from you wake up till you go to sleep, you do what you are expected to do. What is it that Allah expects you to do at that moment? You are driving, you drive defensively, and you obey the law. That's your worship. At that time, that's your act of worship. You go to work, you perfect your work. Even if the boss is not watching, even if nobody is watching, because Allah is watching, which is even more important. You perfect your work, that becomes your act, your worship at that time. You're worshiping Allah by perfecting your work. And then showing the compassion of Islam, sincere compassion to your neighbors and to your colleagues. That's someone who cares. That's something that we can really, because, like it or not, we live in a very individualistic and materialistic society. So this compassion is really not as strong as it's supposed to be. If you show how much you care about your neighbor and your colleagues, and people know that you are someone they can count on for help when they need it, that's the best way to present Islam, to represent the mercy of Islam. Now, if you have like an elderly neighbor, knocking on their door and say, please, I'm here. If there is anything, or if you have an emergency, the day, night, please, this is my number, or knock on my door. I would be glad to help. That would be great. And people will see later this associated that these are Muslims. So, but in all these cases, we have to do it genuinely, sincerely, authentically, not in front of cameras, not because the media is covering. So when we volunteer, when we donate blood, when we participate in civic activities, we have to do it driven by our religion as an act of worship. And that's the magic of Islam, when it fuses the religious duty and civic duties, make them one and the same. So you're serving your country at the same time you're serving your religion. There is not only some Muslim groups created that dichotomy between being religious and being patriotic, or being good citizen, or etc., or obeying the law, to the point that people think and say that if you live in a non-Muslim society, then it's okay even to violate the law and to and even not only not to serve the country, but even it's okay if you do even things that are destructive. So it's an amazing how Islam was twisted. So really the opportunities are there to show the beauty, the mercy of Islam, etc. We just have to do our job as individuals, and also let's stop talking about always community didn't do, community is this, community is that. At the end of the day, this is individual responsibility. The collective work in Islam, it's something that builds on, it's like the second floor. The collective work in Islam, it builds on the individual work, not a replacement for it. It's not like a lot of time you hear this, why the community is not doing this? Why the masjid is not doing this? The community is you and I. The masjid is you and I. Who are the masjid? Who is the masjid or the community? So that's one thing that we need to change, that the mission of Islam and the maqasid of Islam, fulfilling the ultimate purposes of Islam, is primarily individual responsibility. Now, if there are individuals who are already doing it and they want to join hand to do it collectively, that's great. But community is not a substitute or replacement for individuals.
May I add something, Dr. Ghannouchi here?
Sure.
We had a brother join us about a month ago, maybe a little longer than that, once or twice, and he was running for the school board nearby. I mean, this is a perfect example. We need people to get involved in their neighborhoods, in their communities. It's enough. I mean, Muslims have been coming to this country for the last 50, 60, 70 years. They have to connect to their neighborhoods, to their societies, to their local government. They have to show interest. They have to act in a beneficial way to their community, run for office if they have to. Joining the school board was a good thing, and we had a nice discussion with the brother the other day. We cannot be keeping ourselves inside a cocoon for any longer. You know, whatever happens to my neighborhood, to my community, happens to me. And whatever happens to me happens to my community. I think we were guilty of coming in here to this great country and feeling that it is dar kufr. All I have to do is take care of myself. And I'm doing my prayers anyway. And the hell with these other people, you know, they're not even Muslims. We've done it. We have been guilty of doing that for a long time, and it was wrong. It was doing disservice to our religion, to our character. And this is sometimes why some of us are treated like foreigners, like never accepted, because we did not accept them. We did not accept our new reality. We chose freely, basically. Most of us, we were not brought here as slaves. Most of us, you know, make great effort to get that visa, to get that green card, to come here and live here and work here. We should appreciate that. Alhamdulillah, I feel luckier than my siblings who did not come here. But then to show our gratefulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for bringing us here, we need to connect, we need to engage, we need to, and every time we do something good and people say, you are really a good, you know, neighbor, this is because I am Muslim. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say here.
Great. The only thing I need to emphasize, I agree with everything you said, but this is what I recommended to every Muslim who ran for public office, that please don't run as a Muslim representing Muslim community. Don't run to increase the number of Muslims in the public sphere, because we should never think as a minority who is looking for more positions or more to get more from the system. If this is okay for any other minority, it is not okay for those ummah that Allah said about it, أخرجت للناس, that you were sent to serve and to guide, not to serve yourself, to people. So I always recommend that please run as a mainstream candidate who cares about that field and the community at large, and use the same discourse wherever you go. You go to a mosque, you don't start using an Islamic discourse, because nowadays consistency is extremely important. Everything is being recorded everywhere. So, and you should really be consistent. So use the same discourse, whether you are in a mosque, in a church, in a school, you have a vision. If you want to run for office, you should be someone who has a vision, who cares a lot about that field, whether it is education, whether it is even public office, other public offices. You care and you have a vision to serve the community at large. So you are a candidate for school board or for state assembly or for Congress who happens to be Muslim, not you are. So because some people, they make that mistake. I remember very brilliant candidate one time. He was also, I think, running for school board and was presented to the community basically as he's going to be our representative. He came in Taraweeh, and in between Taraweeh, they gave him a few minutes to talk, and the brother introduced him as this is the one who's gonna represent us. And I remember waited for the brother, and at the end I told him, this is my advice, please don't allow that to happen, and in the future don't use a religious discourse in the mosque, because you are not running there to represent the Muslim community. You are running to be member of the school board who serve the education and the community at large. Your religion should not be a factor, neither negative or positive. Should not add anything to you and should not reduce anything to you. Then when you do an excellent job, and then people will Google you and find that you are a Muslim, that's how you serve your religion.
I heard a very practical application of what you said, Dr. Ghannouchi, a few days ago. I think everybody knows that merciful judge from New Hampshire or Vermont, is it? The guy who always asks people questions and lets them go. I mean, he's popular. And they interviewed him the other day, it was a week ago, how come you are so merciful and good? And he said it all comes back to my upbringing, to my family values, to this and that. So basically, he did not come to the office saying, I come from a good family. He came to the office and served like a very merciful judge and did a great job for justice and with mercy, with compassion to the community. And then people ask him, how come? And then he said, okay, it is my background. And we should do the same. We should just come in and deliver. And once we deliver and people start asking questions, how come he's special and he's good? Then you can say, وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Oh, it's because of my values. It's because, I was brought up as a good Muslim. My family taught me the real values of Islam. This is why I became a good member of the society. This is why I am honest. I don't cheat. I don't accept bribery. And I am compassionate. I feel for my community. This is the best way of da'wah, actually. The only way in the Quran.
I would like to add something to this, which is I attended several times whenever they call for fundraising. I go and I talk about the values that we need to carry. I advise the brother or whoever is running about values of Islam. This is the package you need to have to serve everybody, not only Muslims, to serve, because this is the message, this is the mission we need to have. So we need to focus on the values, justice, equality, improving, betterment of the society. So you are doing something here that being a Muslim should be a positive addition to you, or making a difference because you carry this package of values.
Mhm.
So I mean, I don't leave him. Okay, I mean, I will usually advise them to carry this package of values to represent that. So I mean, I will support him because if he take this package, will be great. If other human being without being the same religion take the same package of values, I will support too. So I will look at the agenda and the values that's represented or that carried or the main stuff he's working on before I support. Some Muslim can be calling for something I don't disagree with. I'm not going to support them.
Mm.
So basically, it's the values that will be deterministic to me, or maybe we should have that as a main factor.
Actually, this is not optional. And by religious mandate, you cannot appoint or vote for someone if you know there is someone else who is more qualified. The Prophet ﷺ called it khiyana, yani, treason of Allah and His Messenger. If you appoint someone, or you elect, of course, or vote for someone, and you know that someone else is more qualified for that job. So our criterion should be not whether this candidate is Muslims or non-Muslim. Our criteria should be mainstream criteria and Islamic criteria at the same time. Who is more qualified for that job? And therefore, we consider success when the right person is elected for the right job. Not consider success by how many Muslims we have in Congress or how many Muslims we have. I mean, it should not be the criteria. That's the criteria of minorities. Usually minorities, they think that way. But people who have a mission for all of humanity, they should not think that way. That if there is an election that brings the most qualified candidate, we should celebrate, whether that candidate is a Muslim or non-Muslim. That's a success because we care about the greater good. And we want, because a Muslim is not necessarily qualified for a job. Let's have a school board election, and you have a Muslim who has nothing to do with education. By what, based on what you go and vote for that person? You're going to be held accountable if you do that. And it's not an excuse to say to Allah that I voted for that person because he or she is a Muslim. If that person is not and there is someone else who is a better educator, someone who is more expert in education, who can do better job, if they are qualified, if they're elected, then it is a big mistake. And I don't exaggerate if I say it's a sin.
I think this should go as a package. I mean, if we have Islam represented to the whole community here as a mission with values, with maqasid, with main, maqasid or values that affect the society that we are living in. And then this will align together. But I mean, we cannot just come to the only to the positions or the government elected officers or something. I mean, we are lacking that in our organizations. We are not representing Islam as a value or a system of values. People look at Islam as what? Ritual. No, how you pray, how you Ramadan. Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, everybody is celebrating Ramadan because we have a certain rituals. But if we go beyond that in our organizations, and that's what we need to do, it's like as you said, a must. It's a system of values that can be not a great addition. It's like make a game changer in every society you are in. You are adding values that will change the society from injustice to justice, inequality to equality, from lots of stuff that Islam calling for. And this is the application of Islam. I mean, we don't need to have our own isolated community inside the bigger community. I mean, because the idea of ghetto, or okay, we will have our masjid and we will have our neighborhood around and we will be safe, or maybe we will have some schools of us. This is contradict actually the idea of Islam, because Islam could have lived in the desert, in a oasis, and he has everything nice around him, and will just ignore the rest of the tribes. No, he went to every people, every group of people, and tried to give them the message. I mean, here in America, we need to reach to that level. We have a mission, we have a group of, or a set of values that if it came to this society, it will make it better. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to extend this to another subject, but that's my idea.
The Quran makes it clear among the verses that were not really, they did not take the attention, get the attention they deserve. I mentioned, of course, the verse of Surah Al-Hadid, when Allah said justice is the ultimate goal of Islam. But also this verse in Surah Al-Hajj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ إِن مَكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَمَرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَنَهَوْا عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. It's very clear that this Muslim community, wherever it settles, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, wherever they settle, that's what they do. They establish prayer. That's prayer for what is between you and Allah. Zakah, it's their social obligation. But then that's where we stopped. We stopped into having a mosque, established prayer, having activities and services to the community. And recently we added some outreach work. Some mosques are doing better job than others, but overall it's really not as it's supposed to be. But then Quran says, وَأَمَرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَنَهَوْا عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. You establish the mosque as a base. You serve the needs of the community, religious needs, educational needs, social needs, etc. But then you go out and make a difference and have an impact on the larger society. وَأَمَرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَنَهَوْا عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. And that's what is not happening, unfortunately. And that's why I wish one day we start evaluating our performance by the impact. Because nowadays, I know, and you know, that our communities, they evaluate their work by the size of the facility, how good it is, how big, by the number of people who pray, congregations, by the number of activities, by the budget. We have a surplus or we have a deficit, etc. But hardly you hear anybody talking about what difference did we make in the city where we settled as a Muslim. We had a mosque or Islamic center for so many years. What contribution did we make? What impact did we have? What difference did we make in the city or county or state in which we settled? That you don't hear it. Why? Because of this activism that people are become obsessed with, which is activity for the sake of activity. So they in management and leadership, they warn against confusing activity with achievement. What matters is achievement, not activities, because you may be spinning your wheels. So what's the point? It's what impact, what is your vision, what are your goals, how much of these goals you achieved. That's what we should be talking about, rather than saying we're doing a lot of work, we have a lot of meetings, and we have, so we're busy. No, busy by itself is not good enough. Show me the achievement, and please don't tell me that results are in the hands of Allah and we're not responsible for it, because that's one of the worst ideas that was so widespread among Muslims, and that's basically very effective excuse for failure. Before they start, they say, okay, you know, they tell you two things. Any new government, anything. First of all, they say the situation is extremely bad. Tarika thaqila. And we inherited extremely bad situation. Just to tell you that from now, don't have any expectations. So tarika thaqila. And then you hear this, that results are not in our hands. Results are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's basically taking or disavowing your responsibility. Basically saying, I am not accountable. I'm not responsible. So don't hold me accountable because the results are not in my hand. That has nothing to do with Islam. That teaches us, قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ. When things do not work, you only have yourself to blame. There is no such thing as excuses and circumstances. And we did our part, and that's it. All of this, or haphazard work with no planning, and then use this as an excuse because we're not responsible for results.
Dr. Suhail, I have to say something here.
Sure.
You're asking people to show results. Don't we have to have our objectives defined first? You yourself told us a mission-oriented Muslim will have tazkiyah and islah as his the way to become a mission-oriented Muslim. He has to be committed to continuous tazkiyah and islah that is needed as he can realize it and see it and plan for it. I think we are taking first steps, and we need to be systematic here, and it's very important to be systematic. Not to always talk about tazkiyah and islah. It's very necessary that we keep reminding people who heard it and those who haven't heard it yet. It's important that they realize that tazkiyah and islah are the basic aspiration of a mission-oriented Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
Then we need to sit down and work on the mission itself. And it has to be crystal clear to people. People cannot really imagine what they're supposed to do other than prayer, because it's real. It's real. He knows when he's praying, he's done something that Allah has asked him to do. Well, if we don't explain that this prayer should lead you a step further, that you need to take another step, you need to try to look for the influence of that prayer on your own self and try to encourage yourself to have it. Don't just push it aside. You know, I don't feel anything. That's okay. No, it's not okay. You have to become a better person all the time. The best you can be. This is what tazkiyah does. If you are not better today than you were yesterday, then something is lacking. We don't have time to wait 10 years for one of us to feel the influence of tazkiyah. Tazkiyah has an influence on the person every day.
Immediate.
And tomorrow has to be better than today. Then we need to all together, if we don't do anything in this meeting, except to reinforce these understandings and remind each other of the objectives, that we cannot ask anybody for results. We will not have results. Results are things that we design. We can measure, you know, because we told people we're going to measure them later on, and Allah is measuring them anyway. So we just need to make it clear. I mean, I hope I was able to borrow something positive from my experience as a strategist and put it on the table. We need to have a plan, and the plan has to have objectives and goals, and has to tell us how to reach those objectives and goals. Then we can be responsible for the results. And no Muslims do this at this time. I don't know any Muslims, not even Islamic movement, that are engaged in having clear objectives and goals for when they are in government, what to do next. They don't know. They try to learn on the job, and they goof most of the time.
Actually, they avoid people on purpose avoid to set objectives because if they set objective, you can hold them accountable.
Yes.
So rather than, so to avoid being held accountable, no objectives, so that we can call anything success. I mean, you elect me to be president of a mosque. If I manage to do some remodeling in the mosque, I can tell you at the end of the year that we are successful because I did not give you any objectives in the beginning, any goals. So no objectives, then I can call anything success. I can bring a report and say, this is how many activities we organized. This is how many, so we were successful. So yeah, so not stating objectives is always the way for people to avoid accountability. Again, it's what is needed is not easy, but avoiding that and doing something that we know it's not going to lead anywhere, it's going to be like someone who has a serious illness and is taking painkillers. That's exactly what we're doing. As Muslims here and abroad, what we're doing is we don't want to avoid, we don't want to confront the reality, and we're coming with superficial solutions, quote unquote. They're not true solutions. They are painkillers. It makes you feel good because there are these conventions and panels and discussions and meetings and gathering and etc. But it's spinning your wheels. You're going nowhere. That's not growth. That's, they call it lateral expansion. That's tamaddud, not numu. It's not real growth. You're not moving to the next level. And it is about time to rediscover our religion and to completely change our performance indicators. That should be based on the tazkiyah and the slah person. How much improvement you are making and how much impact you're having, how much contribution you're making. These should be the performance indicators for individuals and for the community. How much improvement you're making and how much impact you're having, or how much contribution you're making. Other than that, Islam, you can spend the whole night praying. If it does not translate in the morning into compassion, into something that serves people and serves the greater good, it's nothing. It's nothing for us as people. Allah will not be pleased with you. Allah will not be pleased with you if you spend the night praying and you don't use that energy during the day to serve, to advance his cause and fulfill his purpose.
I want to say something here that I've been thinking about when Dr. Safi and Dr. Ghannouchi were talking. We most of us are immigrants. We came from our old countries because the economics were bad, the political system was bad, and most politicians back in our countries never run for an agenda. They never run for a plan. They run because he's the son of so and so, because he has a big beard and he represents Muslims and Islam. Because we rarely or maybe never see someone who runs with an actual plan to improve the lives of people. I'm very sad, I must say today, in this country we have two people running for president, and their main thing every day is to ridicule each other. No one is actually making a plan how to improve the economy, for God's sake, how to prevent nuclear war with Russia. I was listening to ex-President Trump talking about President Biden, ridiculing him. I mean, he acts like this, he acts like that. What happened to this country? Do we Muslims have even a responsibility in this country to bring back the what made this country great, which is, you know, people running with a promise, with a plan to improve the lives of people? We don't see this anymore. I think the responsibility has compounded upon us now. I mean, I was having this discussion with my dear brother, Dr. Safi, yesterday. How do we use this discussion here to improve things back home? I think we have to improve things here now. I think as Muslims living in America, we have a responsibility now, if we are at all active in politics or if we are voting, to look for people who have a plan to improve the lives of people. Measurable. I mean, we have been talking about it for the last 10 minutes. Measurable. I want to run for this office because things are bad. They are 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I win, I will, with God's help, with your help, try to fix this, make it like this, like this, like that, eliminate homelessness, bring back, the interest rates, for God's sake. I don't know what. Improve the lives of people, improve justice system, control the brutality of the police, whatever it is, things that people talk about all the time. I think our responsibility is double now. Not only to think about our old countries, how to improve the politics and the situation, but also in this country now we have a big responsibility, if we are engaged, to set the course back on the right course and to vote for people who actually talk about practical things to make the lives of people better. I hope you agree.
I agree, and it's always the case. This mission of Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar becomes more required as the country or society become in worse shape. So the better the society, the less our efforts or our contribution is needed. It's basically closing the gap between the ideal and the reality. So there is no question that situation in America is not really great. People are talking about we're not going in the right direction. We have seen in the last couple of elections that people are now no longer voting for candidates. They are voting against the other candidate because there is no candidate to vote for. There is no one who's convincing. So people usually go to vote for another candidate, or people like a candidate blindly. It's like a sect in some Muslim countries, Taifa, in some other countries. So this is my candidate. I'm going to vote for him regardless of his ethics or achievements or anything. He can lie. He can do bad things. Or this is my party. So we don't, this country is not really producing anymore, even for that particular position. Out of the 300 million or 350 million people, is not producing great leaders because this system was really spoiled with money. And money put a barrier. So with money, it is no longer the most qualified who's going to be elected. It's the one who can get the support of big money, big donors. And I always say that there are so many things that are great in this country, but this role of money in politics, it's really destroying this country because it is preventing from electing the most qualified. If you are someone who has great plan, great vision, very strong leader, etc., if you cannot get those hundreds of millions for your campaign, you're not going to be even considered. So there is a barrier. I remember George Bush, the father. I think he was the one who said. I think he said that when we're still considering to push George W. Bush to run. They're still considering. He had the Gulf Party. He raised $100 million for someone who's still not sure to run. So his father gathered his friends to play golf, and then they raised $100 million. So are you going to compete if you don't have it? So that sets a barrier that unless you are supported by the establishment. And subhanallah, Quran in amazing verse. I don't know, also another verse that did not get the attention it deserves. In Surah Al-Baqarah, long time ago, so centuries, Quran says, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ وَتُدْلُوا بِهَا إِلَى الْحُكَّامِ لِتَأْكُلُوا فَرِيقًا مِنْ أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ بِالْإِثْمِ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. It's an amazing. Do not deal with each other fairly, and do not. Dr. Safi, do you want to translate it?
Yes, and don't give your money to hukam, governors,
Rulers. Yeah.
people in charge, in order to try to obtain control over other people's money that you're not gaining legally.
Yeah. So it has been always the case that
Yes.
those who give money by the left hand, they get much more by the right hand. They get
Or
much
hope to.
more
Yes.
in term, from the policies. So this relationship between money and politics, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned against it long time ago. And that's what is affecting this country. If you want to point to one factor that is hurting this country, is this factor.
Yes.
Because it's not playing field.
Yes.
I mean, imagine this country applies the same thing in business. This country will go down, economy. But in business, they're very careful. No monopoly. They can go after Apple. They can go after Microsoft with hundreds of millions of dollars of fine because of suspicion of monopoly. Why? Because they know that if in business it's not playing field, it's not a fair competition, you're gonna go down like most Muslim countries when there is a monopoly. But they don't do it in politics, unfortunately. So in business, it's you register a company, you can compete next day, and only the best products and the best prices will survive. But not in politics. In politics, you cannot say the best candidates will be elected. No, it's money.
Can I bring the conversation back to something I heard you both using, but I don't think it had enough thoughts. People don't question it. Al-amr bil-ma'ruf wal-nahy an al-munkar. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use the term ma'ruf and munkar instead of clearly use good and bad? What is ma'ruf actually in Arabic? Why are we supposing that ma'ruf is good and munkar is bad? Based on what? Is the same ma'ruf that was ma'ruf during the days of the Prophet is the same ma'ruf used today? If that's true, then Allah would have used a different term. I am proposing that ma'ruf has to do with time and place. What's good 500 years ago might not be considered good today. And what was considered to be bad 500 years ago might not be considered bad today. And what's good in the United States might not be considered good in Indonesia today. And so forth. We need to think about it more and maybe have more people participating in this discussion. This is, I mean, I think we're putting on the table very interesting concepts and ideas, So where is Firas? Where are other people? Jalal usually sometimes participate, and Arif is a new person with us. Please give us your opinion on things so we can have a true group participation in those ideas.
Assalamu alaikum. You're absolutely correct. There was a lot of great points here. I think if we can just emphasize and relate to what you just said, which is like, I tried to cut off a couple of times, the model of leadership we're looking for. It's like, what is that model of leadership that might work today and we've been failing to hold on? What's that model that is not gonna everything, our mission, our goals, our measures is not going to be dependent on that leader, because the models that we have up to now, it's relative and it's connected to people, persons, and it's not connected to communities and to groups. The person dies or the leader dies, and it dies with him, his goals and the missions that have been established. It's like, even if we just look at our group here as 9 people that we attending this meeting, do we know what's happened and what we're gonna do tomorrow if, for example, Dr. Suhail travels somewhere else? Do we have just to cancel the meeting because our meeting is connected to Dr. Suhail? And our life been depending on this all of this time, and it just doesn't seem that we take this as serious. We mentioned this in the beginning of the conversation, but we deviated from even to go back to it and define what that leader is. We talked about everything else. We talked about measurable goals, measurable missions. We talked about, and all of these are very important, but we didn't touch enough on like where are we going and what is that leadership model that is gonna work. Please go ahead. That is gonna work in
May I answer that question, Dr. Suhail?
Sure.
Brother, I was living in United States when various schools of governments were formed. I'm a witness to management science and a practitioner of management science. There is a new management school that I discovered while I'm here. It's called servant leadership. It's not known in various schools of management, but it's a very important school and represent a very important concept. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We can all come and say, well, the leader we're looking for is like Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Yes, but his leadership today is defined through a school that has its principles, its way to reach there. So we don't need to be talking in abstract. Servant leadership. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Khadimul qawmi sayyiduhum." Or Sayyidul Qawmi Khadimuhum. Also, he's teaching us to be servants. A servant is it's not in our countries, in our background. A servant is someone like demeaning things. Well, I sign many of my emails that have anything to do with religion as servant. If I'm not a servant, I shouldn't be involved with any groups. I'm there to serve them. And that when I feel like I'm serving someone, I feel like I'm fulfilling the Islam that I believe in. So it's not only a value or a virtue to be your servant, it's my mission to be your servant. And when I'm serving you as a group, then I am practicing leadership within that group. I mean, we can talk about this in much more details anytime you want, not necessarily on Sunday. I'm open to discuss it anytime you want, because the more I relate these thoughts to other people, the more successful in my life I feel. I feel I'm accomplishing my purposes in living on this planet. So we'll take it from there anytime you want.
Of course, I really think that is important, and that is an important topic. And maybe it's one Sunday is not enough for it. Maybe it needs more than that. But I really think that it's really important to have that model, and to have that education and that vision to get things easy. Because even as a neighborhood association, it's like to serve your community within your own neighborhood, which is happening here. I feel that people hesitant and have a problem even doing that. They think that, oh, I'm the president of the neighborhood association. That means that I'm going to do everything. Where it's more like about serving and delegating and sharing and mashura and budgeting and a lot of other things that one person doesn't do. And in we are not, it's like, yes, we are servants, but in the meantime, we are. The Khilafah was successful in the first years because they were serving the people, but they had mashura. They had special groups of people who are specialized in certain topics, and they did what they did to be successful. When it moved into what we just mentioned about money and who's more rich and who is more who can control, this is where things start going down. And this is where I think our focus, or somehow our vision, needs to avoid being scared of being servants, of being able to share, and even be more to be afraid of those who have the control of the money to influence. Because as long as we serve and we're doing the right thing, the money becomes, I think it's important to have, it's important for anything, but I believe it becomes more like a tool later on. Because as long as you're serving and you're doing what you need for the community and whatever you can, money will comes with it. But it is very important. I really appreciate your input.
Well, the prophetic model requires a lot of time because it is an amazingly successful and effective model. But in a couple of words, the Prophet ﷺ and the model of Khulafa Rashidin combine two things together in successful way, which is individual leadership and collective leadership. And from that time, I know we lost, we failed, we didn't even try, until the democracy nowadays came really close to do that. Because in democracy, you have institutions, but you have an individual leader. There is a president, but it's not an absolute power. There is check and balances. That was the system. That's the prophetic model. If you look at the prophetic model, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. There is consultation and there are institutions, there is transparency, there is accountability, but also there is a leadership. Because since then, that time, we either go to one of the two extremes, which is either we go and an individual establish absolute power, no accountability, no transparency, no checks and balances, or in reaction to that, we go to the other extreme, which is total anarchy or paralysis, where we keep only discussing, and we never decide and we never move. So we lose either the shura or we lose the decisiveness. And what's the miracle or what's amazing about the prophetic model, and that's the even in contemporary theory, the most successful model is the one that balances the two. That you have an individual leader who's responsible and accountable. It's not prestige, it's more responsibility. They have a room. You cannot cripple them completely and then tell them why you did not succeed. At the same time, there are all those precautions that will prevent dictatorship, which is they are accountable. There is a constitution they cannot violate. There is a Sharia they cannot violate from our perspective as Muslims. If we elect leader and they violate a clear-cut thing in Islam, we're not going to accept it. If there is a constitution in a mosque or in a community and this leader violates, we're not going to accept it because that constitution is the contract. Yeah. So that leader already has some things to restrain from becoming a dictator, but at the same time, we should have an individual leader who has some authority, but with it, proportional responsibility. And that's what the Rasul ﷺ did in an amazingly effective way. So if there are no more comments or questions, we can adjourn and then inshallah we'll meet next Sunday.
Inshallah.
And again, it is one of the basic responsibility of each one of us that we're going to be asked about. If you find something useful, if you find this meeting useful, you need to be talking to people around you. And then whether they accept your invitation or not, that's not your responsibility. Whether if they come once and they don't like it, they are free. But your job is to it's like you go to the mall and you find a very good sale, you go and inform people around you. If you find that you're getting something useful from this meeting, don't hesitate to share with people around you.
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
مع السلامة.